So you were only supposed to get 10. If you even so much as barely let go of your ankles, you let go, the count starts over. From the beginning, we were almost there. You had one more, and now I got to start all over. On average, you would leave the bathroom with anywhere from 50 to 70 beatings.
I would agree that's not a spanking.
And there were just times we would just have to block out what's going on in the bathroom because the kid's just screaming and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as the sexual abuse goes, like every single one of us has been touched by it.
Reagan made a big issue about children can't consent, but children can say no. Children can say,
Mom had rage issues. I know I've talked about dad's anger, but mom had serious rage issues. And she would shake us violently. She would physically grab children, slap us. That was pretty common.
So she was very violent.
She was very violent. She was very physically violent. But the one thing that she would do was she would abandon us in the middle of nowhere. She would get into the van and she would leave for hours on end. There was thought policing that went on the home. Okay, so things were gathered up. There were books, movies, CDs, toys, decorations. I remember the singing flower that danced.
It's not enough to throw it away, you have to burn it.
Yes.
The bonfire.
Everything was thrown into a big pile. Everything goes in, we burn it, and we're singing hymns when we went to the bathroom. If we were in the shower, anyone could come in. And there's not much space to move in, but we would frequently be in there like 5 girls at a time. Like that seemed okay. Like one person on the toilet, one in the shower, one doing laundry. The rule was you were not allowed to lock the bathroom door. But dad would come in and he would go to the bathroom while we were in the shower. Just don't look. And then vice versa. He'd be in the shower. He didn't lock the door. Go in. And I know that at least one sibling saw him naked and they felt shame for it. Yeah, there was no privacy whatsoever. We were not allowed to have any. Women and children were less than. If you're a female, good luck having any value.
It's basically a grooming cult. There's
Yes.
a cult for grooming women and girls to be abused.
Yes, there was
molested.
a lot of sexual abuse that went on so much in all the ATI families.
Right.
It's so disturbing.
The literature itself basically says if that's happening to you, just grin and bear it and be a good Christian.
There's literally literature that says being abused will give you spiritual strengths or something. Don't you want to be spiritually strong? That's literally one of the questions.
Do you want to not be
rather
abused or do you want to be spiritually strong?
Yes. Yeah, this is basically a Stephen King novel.
Yeah, it's just beginning.
Hello.
Hello.
We are now live. And so we are here today. We're joined with Mackenzie. And I'm sorry if I sound a little weird because I'm getting over pneumonia. But so we are going to do part 9 now of our Long Way to Hell series, which I believe, Mackenzie, you coined that term, I believe.
Very proud of that.
So this is to give, another perspective and to show that, Haley's not just making this up. And ultimately, to be able to help others who have been through the same thing. So I'll let you women take over. And so we want to start with just talking about why even talk about this, because it's been confusing for some people about why we don't just keep it silent and keep it to ourselves and not talk about it.
Why don't you just let it go? Just forget about it. Why do you got to be vocal? So I think I've shared, I had a huge long why video.
If you don't know, Mackenzie is Haley's sister.
Yeah, she's my sister. I should have confirmed that.
Introduce yourself.
Yes. Okay, so I'm Haley Rham. I'm married to Reagan. And this is Mackenzie Woodward now. You go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Mackenzie Woodward. I'm married and I have 2 boys. And we live in Indiana now. And my why for why we are doing this is because it is very important to me that the truth sets people free, because the truth set me free from a horror that I didn't think I could ever escape. And I want other people who might relate to certain parts of my story, whether it's the religious abuse, the sexual abuse, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, or the mental abuse, or whatever kind of abuse you want to go through. you relate to, not what to go through. I want them all to know that there is healing for every single aspect of your story, because there was healing for every aspect of my story. And I want to shine a light on the evil that was done to me, simply because exposing the darkness makes room for the light. And the Bible talks about how the light reveals those deep secrets, those dark secrets, the darkness. And in doing that, the light can come in and healing can begin and restoration can happen. So that is why I want to speak up for the silence. And there has been a lot of oppression in not just my family, but in the families we were raised around, the culture that we grew up in, the cult we were raised in. There was huge silencing of the women and no justice for anything that happened to them. And I'm tired of it. So I'm speaking up.
Well, I'm very, very impressed and very proud of your courage being able to speak up, because it's not easy to do. So we really appreciate that. And yeah, and we're planning on doing 2 parts, right? So second part, we'll probably get more into how you were healed of, and more into, but this will be kind of more so to maybe for people that are maybe feeling alone or are experiencing symptoms, because that's the thing is you will experience symptoms, physical symptoms as an adult from trauma and abuse that happened to you as a child. So we'll cover some of that, and then
we'll tease that.
We'll probably have Mackenzie back on for part 2 to talk more about her healing journey and how you can actually be healed of all those harmful physical effects from trauma and abuse.
Yes.
Yes, because that's the exciting part.
Yes. When we started this video series, we didn't have this little guy yet. So
yeah, you were pregnant in those videos.
I was pregnant with this little guy. So
it's here. That's why I haven't done any videos in a while.
Yeah. Little Archer. I say hello. I say hello. Say hello, people. Hi. Anyway. So obviously we grew up in the same household, right? And there's been other siblings who've been like, that wasn't my experience. You're telling lies.
Well, the person who said that, they have experienced stuff too.
They had forgotten it. They had experienced it. But they were saying what I was mostly the beatings actually and the grooming was not true. And I think this is very common where people can be raised in the same exact household, but this is true of healthy parents and this is true of unhealthy parents. All siblings, all children in that house are not parented exactly the same way.
Nope. And I have 2 children, and I can tell you that even though I love them dearly with all my heart, they are not getting the same mom because I react differently to different scenarios. They both have different personalities and they both need different things from me. And so even just in that aspect of being nurtured, neither of them are going to have the same memories of me growing up. Everyone has their own individual experience and personalities react differently. That's a beautiful thing. But it also makes it confusing when abusers come from this, or the abused come from the same household, because then it sounds like one of them is lying because they say they have a testimony about one thing, like, oh, I was beaten in this way. And another sibling will say, well, I was beaten in this way, so you're wrong. I don't remember that. And it gets even more muddying when you have abuse survivors who completely forget their experiences at all. And they just, and that happened for me too.
Yeah, that dissociative amnesia, which a lot of people don't realize is a legitimate thing. It's an actual thing, and it's a coping mechanism and a survival mechanism to keep you alive long enough so that you can hopefully get to a safer place one day. And then once you're in a safe place, then you can unfortunately remember things. It's a good and a bad thing all in one, because right, it feels horrible when you're going through it, but at the same time, it's what's needed. And so with that in mind, how do you feel like can we actually trust our own memories? Like, how do you think we can go about doing that?
Well, first of all, like you said, you have to feel safe. That's the most important thing. Your body won't remember it if you're not feeling safe. Unfortunately, like you said, it's when you reach that safe place that you can finally remember. And when you get to that safe place, there's a relief that happens where you're like, finally, I'm okay. And then your body starts remembering stuff and you're like, oh, shoot, what is this? And then it feels like you're not safe anymore because now you're being, for me, it was being every Monday I would talk with you guys and we would go into, the memories that I'd forgotten. they were very horrible memories, and my body had to repress them because it prioritized keeping me alive. And I would have gone insane if I remembered that. If I had to carry all of those memories with me, my brain would have just broken. But when I was reliving them, I was like, I know there's a reason why I forgot this. And it's, I was grateful my body had kept it from me, but it's also really hard when it comes out. And the only reason that I can trust my memories is because of the consistency with how it came out. Every time I would relive one incident, it would always be the same physical manifestations that I would be feeling and feeling. I think I just said the same thing.
All right.
I'm a little nervous. I'm
That's
very
what happens
nervous.
when you do live streams, so that's all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you're talking about is called repressed memories, and isn't it true that those are considered credible in like court? That
Yes,
like
they are. They are
thing?
taken. I think they're taken with a grain of salt, because
All testimonies
people
are.
can have, right, that's true. False memories. People can have false memories. Like they've done studies where people actually remembered something that wasn't true because the people suggested to them a memory. That's why when police take these kinds of repressed memories, they're taught to do as many open-ended questions and not leading questions as they possibly can, because they don't want to lead the victim into thinking, adding things there that aren't there. So you do have to be very careful that you don't plant thoughts in your own mind. But the memories that I remembered, I couldn't have imagined them, because if I was going to imagine something, it would not be the way that I imagined. Like I would not have come up with it. And that was one of the reasons I knew that it wasn't from my own imagination, was because this never would have occurred to me to imagine this.
Right. Okay, so with that being said, do you want to start, like, how do you want to start with
Going through what your memories
experience
and what your experiences were?
We can start with when I was younger and some things that I remember from there, because I feel like chronologically that might be a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
So the first really big abuse moment I remember happening was when I was 4, and that is a really young age to have a memory about. And the reason I want to talk about this one is because Michael Johnson in the video said that children can consent. And that made me very angry, because even adult women who are sexually assaulted often freeze up, or they get really scared, or they even go along with the abuse that's happening to them because they are terrified they are going to be hurt.
Should I go ahead and play that clip real quick?
Yes, please.
People are tuning in.
Parent and they're in fear, but if it's another child.
Start at the end. I gotta rewind it.
I know this is a quote from Pastor Michael Johnson. I know Reagan made a big deal about children can't consent, but children can say no unless it's a parent and they are in fear.
Reagan made a big issue about children can't consent, but children can say no. Children can say, again, unless it's a parent and they're in fear, but if it's another child.
So that was the context. Yes.
Hearing him say that fills me with a lot of anger, righteous anger, for 2 reasons. One, the cult we were raised in taught us you are not allowed to say no to anyone. You can't say no to a relative if they want a hug from you, even if you're uncomfortable. You can't say no to your parent. God forbid you say no to your parent. It never crossed my mind once to ever tell my parent no.
Well, no,
because
obedience was the highest. That was the prized thing. Like we were taught the 5 keys of obedience, and one of them was right away. Like if you didn't immediately come, you would get spanked for that. And I think we've detailed how we got spanked. It's a beating. If we've already spelled this out in previous videos. But that left no room for child development. Like children, like it, sometimes they physically can't hear you. And it's not because they're deliberately ignoring you. It's because they're not fully developed. Now, does that mean that you everybody brings up my kid's going to go in the road. I need them to be obedient. Okay. Yes. I'm not talking about that kind. That's not the kind of obedience that we were taught. It was go do this. And if you don't do it right away, or if you don't come right when I'm calling you to the breakfast table, you are disobedient. And that's a spanking. Delayed obedience, that's a beating. I'm sorry, delayed obedience is disobedience, and you're getting a beating for that.
Yeah,
Right.
do we want to like cover what exactly the beatings were? Because they're not just regular spankings.
Sure, we can cover that. Let's cover that right after I explain this, because I don't want to forget this thought. So the no, you couldn't say no. You weren't allowed to say no. And so I was coerced into a graphic sexual encounter. I don't know what else to call it. I'm not going to go into details because there's no reason to. I was 4 though, and I was coerced into this by my older siblings, and I was hiding. I remember vividly hiding in the closet because I felt uncomfortable and I didn't want to do it. And I don't actually have the memory of doing it. I just know that I did. And then I remember that afterwards, somehow, Mom found out that we were doing this. I think one of the younger siblings told her, actually. And she found out, and she was cooking dinner at the time. So we were all upstairs by ourselves. So I do know that she yelled at us and that she was waving around whatever utensil she was using for dinner, which I can understand the shame and the like horror of finding your children doing this thing. But it's not the children's fault necessarily. If they're doing this, then something really bad has had to have happened to them. If I came across my kids doing this, right, I would be horrified as well.
Anger at your children is not the right response in that moment.
No, it's
anger at yourself, anger at whoever exposed them, but not your own children, because they don't fully understand what's going on.
Right. Who has done this to my children to give them this idea in the first place? Where did they get this idea? Because it wasn't a normal childhood development sexual curiosity.
Right.
Like
and
my
you
boys
might
have
say you don't remember the actual incident, but Haley remembers it, and the other sibling did, because Haley was also coerced by that same sibling in that event. And it went on. Actually,
and Haley actually coerced me into it as well. So we were all victims. Even the sibling who coerced us was a victim because she had things done to her as well. So I just remember Mom yelling at us. I did not get spanked for that. I believe you got beaten for that, right, Haley?
Yeah.
So that was one of the battery against the child.
Yeah, that was
that was different than the regular spanking is what happened to me in that moment.
So probably should clarify what we're talking about. So I'm going to play that video.
Take my word for it.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson, their pastor, agrees that physical abuse took place.
We all need to be careful as well.
So I'll pause and give clarification. So most of this meeting was discussing the allegations that I made in my video to Terry, and here is saying that they I was too harsh when I described them as beatings, that they were actually spankings, and that's the context here.
Because watching Reagan's video and hearing every time one of the kids got spanked, it was replaced with the word beat, and they were beaten for it. Yes, there was some.
One quick thing. So whenever whenever kids were spanked in our home, the rule was you had to hold your ankles.
Okay.
Hands down. Hold your
hands down.
Hands on your ankles.
Hands on your ankles.
Yes. And if you and it was 10 whacks, but if you let go, they would start over. That hurts. You could get upwards 50 to 70 whacks per thing. If you
or PD.
Yes.
Pardon?
With a hand, a belt, or a PD pipe.
Yeah.
Whatever it's about.
So that's what we mean by beating. That's not a spanking anymore. That's you
No,
go too
no,
far.
that would not. I would agree that's not a spanking. Okay.
No.
So.
And there were just times we would just have to block out what's going on in the bathroom because the kid's just screaming and you can't do anything about it. So that's what we mean by beating. Whenever that word gets used, that is what we mean.
Did you experience that? Did you get that?
Yeah.
Is that how you remember it? Hold your ankles. If you turn loose, you're going to get You gonna get more?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think every parent at some point has probably spanked in anger. Instead of taking a step back, we try to send our boys to the room, and then we cool off, and then we go talk to them about the infraction, why they need the discipline, and then we would apply it in a measured way. Okay. So yeah, I can't say that's not appropriate. I mean, if the infraction is that bad, it's time to get some help. It's time to get some help. Okay, it's time to get some help.
So yeah, that's what we were talking about when we talk about beatings. They aren't just spankings. And
Yes.
again, like Pastor Johnson didn't seem to understand what the siblings were trying to tell him, because it wasn't just that the infraction was that bad. It was like you guys were playing hide and seek.
In the laundry baskets.
And you weren't allowed to, and Mackenzie was hiding the laundry baskets and she wasn't supposed to. So she got beaten like that for it.
Well,
and,
we both were. I just didn't say I was.
Right, but she's the one that got.
So that's why I remember the instance and you don't, because I didn't get the beating, but I just lived with the guilt for not taking responsibility for what I'd done. Because I was just like, I can't have another one today. I can't.
And then he's saying if you turn loose, no, it's just if you barely let go of your ankles.
You barely let
So
go.
it was even worse.
Yeah.
Than he was.
And my experience with the spanking was slightly different than what Emily might have described, because I don't remember getting 50 to 70 beatings. She might have gone.
Uh-oh. She froze.
Hopefully she comes back.
Oh, no.
So yeah, right, obviously the number depends on whether or not you are letting go of your ankle. So if you're good at holding on to your ankles, then you'd only get 10 max. But
yeah, I do remember getting a lot.
Because you remembered more like, what did you say, like 30 to 50 or something?
It was something like that. But I do remember leaving the bathroom at one point and I had welts on my thighs and my butt. And it hurt to sit down. And I was like,
and that's considered abuse.
Oh my gosh. To answer your question, Joseph, yes, they did follow No Greater Joy.
And Mackenzie's back.
Hey, you're back. Yeah.
I just disappeared for a moment. My Wi-Fi cut out for some reason.
Let's see. What's No Greater Joy? Is that pearls?
Yeah.
But they didn't. But that's not. They don't talk about this kind of spanking.
No, but this is where that began. Was
Right,
their book, Train Up a Child?
Because they
Mom
for 3 days straight.
Yes.
Mom will tell the story of how she was reading that book, and 9-year-old Stephanie came home from school, and Mom had I think it was a stick. It was something. It was a stick, a switch, something in her hand, and the book in the other.
Somewhere.
Yeah, we did that in another video. We covered that blog post. We reacted to that blog
post. Yeah. So yes, it was definitely from the pearl. Oh, yes. I agree with you, Joseph. I agree. When I watched the Shiny Happy People and saw one of the speakers at one of their conferences, the IBLP conferences, bring a child from the audience that wasn't even his kid up to the stage to demonstrate spanking, and he put him over his knee and was like pretend spanking him over his bottom, and then when he told the kid to give him a hug afterward.
Whose kid was it?
It was some random guy from the audience.
It wasn't even his child.
No, it was some random boy. And he made him hug him. And then he said, I don't think you hugged daddy hard enough, because he was pretending to be his dad in this case. And then he pretended to spank him again. And the audience is just laughing and thinking this is so funny. And then the kid hugs him more and he's like, that's what I'm talking about. And everyone's clapping and cheering. And I was crying. And I looked at my husband. I said, that's what it was like. You were forced to be affectionate to your parent after they just beat you. And I don't remember them giving us hugs, but we still had to pretend like the rest of the day. I mean, that was so normal. We had to pretend like that didn't even happen.
Yeah.
That nothing had happened, nothing weird had happened to us.
Horrible, traumatic experience. It's not like a normal spanking.
It's not normal discipline. It's not normal whatsoever. So
as I was saying before I got cut off, that my experience with spanking was different than the other sibling. Mine wasn't 50 to 70 spankings at that time. It was usually 10 to 20 or 30. I would try
Which is
very
still
hard not to let go.
excessive. Like any normal person hears it, like, what the heck is that? I heard 10.
Yeah.
That's what I remember Haley telling me. I'm like, 10? Like, I thought that was borderline abuse, but turns out that was just the minimum. So that's why there's a variability here, because it depends on whether or not you let go of your ankles.
Yes. It was
'Cause you're
5
bent
when I
over,
was
stripped
younger.
naked below the waist in a very humiliating position while you're being beaten like this with very dangerous items, might add.
PVC pipe was the one that was used the most. I never got spanked with a stick. I know you did, Haley, but I never got spanked with a stick. I do remember Dad spanking me a couple of times with his hand. Once when I was 7 at church, probably for being noisy during the service as a 7-year-old kid. He took me into the men's bathroom and spanked me in there. I don't remember the spanking, or I'm sorry, the beating, because it was like way too hard. And you can misalign, as I understand it, you can misalign a child's spine by hitting them with your hand.
Real quick, if you don't remember, how do you know it happened?
I remember before and after. I remember crying. I remember it was weird.
But then it's blocked out and you end up leaving. Okay.
Yes, the actual spanking. I remember it was with his hand because he didn't have anything else. I remember it was weird being in the men's room because we weren't allowed in there. I just remember it was a very painful, I know it was a very painful experience, but the actual it happening, I don't remember. It's like a vague impression, like this is what I've always known happened then, but I've never, I don't have the whole memory with me. It's like my brain's compressed it and just given me like vague details. And this is very common with abuse survivors, that you will have a lot of repressed memories. And I honestly don't remember very many spankings that I got. I don't remember very many infractions that I got. I know I got spanked for them. I've been told by other siblings that I used to stand outside the bathroom door and plead with mom to please stop spanking the child. And I can only think of one instance where I remember it, and it's not even a very vivid memory. It's just kind of I just remember standing there, like knocking on the door, feeling really nervous. Like, how could I say anything against mom? Like, what a horrible person. But I was also really scared because the child was like crying and crying and she wouldn't stop. And this wasn't a one occasion, because other siblings have told me I did this repeatedly, but I don't remember all of them, just one. So my brain has compressed all of those memories into like one. And I can remember like one spanking that mom gave, or I'm sorry, beating that mom gave me. And I only remember 2 that Dad gave me, one in the living room and one in the bathroom at the church.
Yeah. So another reason that you remember the before, you remember the going in, and that time block in that traumatic memory being completely erased is because of dissociation. So
what is dissociation?
So dissociation is where the body a person mentally removes themselves from that space.
It's not voluntary.
It's not voluntary.
It
happens. And the more time someone is in a repeated abusive event, the body starts to premeditatively extract you from that space. And it will also deaden the nerves.
This is something you are making up. You've read.
No, this is scientific studies. There's studies out there that prove that this exists. And there's also something where the body will send if it's expecting pain, and it will numb itself so that it physically can't feel that pain anymore, because our bodies are like, God designed our bodies to withstand this much horrific stuff is incredible. Because I mean, on the outside of this, on the other side.
It makes me think of that Home Alone line. They left the kid at the funeral parlor all day. And he's like, oh, but he was fine. Kids are resilient. When he started talking again, a few
months later,
when he started talking again, he's fine. Clearly not fine.
I know, but there are coping mechanisms that are built within our bodies so that, we live in a fallen world. We live where people can do horrific things. And it's like, how are we supposed to survive that? And I honestly consider dissociation a grace. It is a mercy. It is a gift. to be able to dissociate from the space that you were in while you are withstanding this. There is just, so that is a reason why that you cannot remember that, because your body chose to say, it yeeted your mental space out of there, and it's like, we're not living with this.
Right. And I think I too am so grateful. And one of the things, like, just to give a little tease about the next video, when I had my first like huge encounter with Jesus, one of the things I asked him was, why didn't you stop all of it? And he said, or why didn't you help me? And he said, I did. I allowed your brain to disassociate so that you wouldn't have to, endure it, and to get you to this safe place where you could heal from all of it. So I was there. I was protecting you in that way. And I am not sorry for one bit of abuse I have endured, because of how great God can shine on all the parts of my story, how magnified and glorified he can be, that I can tell that any person that has gone through anything even remotely similar to me, there's healing for that. There's restoration for that. You don't have to stay with that. I had lots of different mental troubles in my adult life as a result. But that's in the next video. Get back to the hell that we were raised in.
Stop interrupting you and let you go through everything that you remember.
Is it
we should what?
Back and forth.
Stop interrupting you and let you go through your story. What you remember happening.
This is good. This is good. It's prompting stuff. Just as we prayed that the Lord would prompt whatever needs to come up. After that incident when I was 4, there were probably other incidents that happened, but the next major incident that happened was when I was 9, which again was a repressed memory that I still haven't fully relived. I'm not quite sure what it was. I know the person involved, and I know it was sexual abuse. I know the event it was at, and generally where it occurred. I don't know the exact details, but I know it was when I was 9.
At the full party?
No, it was at a wedding.
Okay.
So,
Where
that
was the wedding at?
year,
Where was the wedding at?
our house
So
that
your
we
own
had.
family's property.
Yes. That's actually where all my abuse that I remember occurred, was either in our house or on our property. So yeah, it was definitely not a safe place. Anyway, that summer and fall, I started experiencing horrific nightmares. I don't even remember them. I just remember that I'd wake up screaming bloody murder. And I started sleepwalking. One sibling caught me trying to escape out the back door, and she led me back to, while I was asleep. I have no memory of this. This is what she told me, that I was trying to get out the back door, and she led me to the recliner where she was sleeping at the time, because the bedroom wasn't being used for all of us at the time. We were all sleeping in me and Emily and Corey and Haley.
Yeah, Haley was sleeping.
What?
That was me, wasn't it?
No, it was Emily. Emily was sleeping on the recliner at that time. There were 2 recliners. I think you were sleeping in the hide-a-bed with me and Corey at that time, just during that time.
Okay.
But Emily led me back to the recliner. She said she remembers having a 5-minute conversation with me. My eyes were open. I seemed lucid. I remember none of this. And the next morning she asked me about it, and I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's why they had to put a lock
happened.
on the back door, right?
Do what?
Isn't that why they had to put a lock on the back door so you couldn't get out while you were sleepwalking?
I don't remember there being a lock on the back. Well, I mean, I remember the chain.
Yes, that chain wasn't there until you started sleepwalking and trying to get out.
Oh, well, at least they tried something.
Because there was also, you would wake up, you would sit up, like this was like a freakish horror film. You would sit up straight in the bed, because I remember being next to you and I'm like, we're trying to get some sleep here, man. But you would wake up screaming bloody murder. Like, that's what, and it would just, nothing seemed to prompt it. And you wouldn't remember doing that.
Should have been a sign
during the day. You also like turned on the computer, went to the bathroom, and I know Mom came and was like, hey, what are you doing? You're like, nothing. She was like, okay.
Yeah, I don't remember literally any of that. I do remember I would wake up in terror and I would go to mom's room, and I will always be grateful for this. She would let me sleep with her, and I did not experience nightmares in her bed for some reason. I can only remember one time I ever had a bad dream in her bed. And so I always felt safe there. And she would always let me climb in bed with her. And I so appreciate that she did that, because it really did help. Nothing else would stop the nightmares. But during that time, I had a bear, a little white bear named Snowflake. And we had very few toys or possessions at that time, because when we moved to that house, it was very tiny. The upstairs wasn't finished. Our clothes were in totes stacked on each other. And actually at that point they were in a closet.
That came later.
Wasn't your house was like
That's
around
true.
900 square feet?
It was
Right,
963 square feet.
And there's how many people living there?
Mom was pregnant with baby number 8.
That's correct. So
that's
all of our
that's
toys,
not healthy right there.
About this time when you were experiencing this was before the back bedroom was remodeled, so we didn't have
That's
those
right.
totes yet.
all our clothes were in the back bedroom. They were all hung up, and
And
Yeah.
and on the floor in the boxes and stuff. Which
yeah, I guess that was later. So anyway, all of our toys were in little like plastic containers, and they were stored on the bookshelf. And if you got a new toy, you either got to keep that toy and get rid of an old toy, or you just didn't keep the new toy, because we just did not have the space for them. So whatever you had was valuable to you. It meant something. So this bear meant something to me. And I remember I would sleep with every night, and I would talk to it. Now, you have to understand, at the time, I did not have any friends at church. We weren't socializing on a regular basis. Not that you have to, cart your kids around everywhere and socialize every opportunity.
no, but
I really didn't have anyone.
out, so it wasn't possible for us to be that social that often.
Right. And I had a lot of siblings, but I didn't have any friends outside of our family. Nobody at church that I could, just talk to and be, friends with. I just don't remember connecting with anyone. I always thought I was a weird kid, and I didn't know why. I just didn't understand, but I just felt like I was weird, and I felt quiet and withdrawn, and just I tried to get by without people noticing me, because that felt safest to me. That was how I survived. Other siblings got loud. I got quiet, and that worked for me for a long time. And that's why this is so hard, because I'm finally breaking out of the quiet, and it is a comfortable place for me. The speaking up is not comfortable at all, but it's very, very important. Anyway, so I had this bear, and I would talk to it at night, and I did not think the bear was real. Someone told me they remembered I said that the bear was watching me, but I never remember thinking the bear was scary. The bear was comforting to me. It was what I slept with. And I remember one time imagining it as a real live bear, like a big bear that was walking with me through the forest, and I had my hand on its back. It was like it was protecting me. So it was just an emotional support animal. And they have shown that in
children use their imaginations.
Children use their imagination.
Oh, no, the horror. Don't say it so.
That was illegal. But also, I think the reason that some of us, that the parents got the idea that you thought your bear was real was someone threw the bear, like knocked it off of the couch and onto the floor, and you freaked out. And you were like, don't touch my bear. Don't drop Snowflake or something. Like you completely freaked out. And that's when,
Just because it was special to you.
just because it was special.
That anger that I don't remember that specific incident. I'm sure it happened, because I remember another incident where you and Corey took my dog off the leash and were walking my dog without my permission. And I had rage at you guys for taking my dog off the leash. And I screamed, I hate you, because we did not have very many things. Whatever you had to fiercely protect, because we weren't told you can say no. And so you kind of got really protective over your stuff. Even though you weren't supposed to say no, I still didn't like the idea of someone taking my stuff. So
Do you remember,
I think that
remember how we were taught this? Do you remember how we were taught this?
the pineapple story,
Not
giving
just
up of our rights.
stop standing on your rights. You
Yes.
have no right to anything that belongs to you, not even your own body.
You guys
Yep.
are communists.
Stop standing on your rights. That was the line. If you
It's very
were
unpatriotic.
trying to like say, hey, that's mine, that was the line that was thrown at you. Stop standing on your rights. Let it go. And
Yeah.
so that anger, your boundaries were being crossed. People
So that's
were
part of the grooming cult, is that you don't have any right to your own body, and if people are touching you in
or
ways you don't
anything
like,
wrong.
there's nothing you can do about it.
Yes, I remember
Especially if they're
thinking.
family members, which all the
Right.
rape, all the sexual abuse happened from family members or maybe close friends and neighbors.
Yeah, a family friend was one. That wasn't, but the rest of them, yes, were family members. I lost my train of thought. It was something.
Snowflake,
Snowflake, the bear getting knocked on the ground.
you walking the dog. Us walking the dog. And screaming, I hate you.
Right after that. Oh, I remember thinking as I was growing up, if someone ever assaulted me, I would just take it because I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And I was like, man, I just kept thinking to myself.
Because I remember
That's
you
not funny.
talking, like you had this whole plan in mind on what would happen if you got raped and that you would keep the baby. And stuff. I'm like,
Yeah, I exercised.
I'm like, good
the
for
whole
you,
thing.
but that's really weird that you're anticipating that potentially happening to you. So it turns out,
Yeah, I think I had that.
Because again, that was part of you were basically groomed to be victims of that.
Yes,
protected.
yes. I just when and part of the torment that I endured was whenever I would be around a man, especially like someone close to our family, sometimes I would get these horrible intrusive thoughts about what they could do to me and what I would do if they tried. And usually it was nothing. I'm alone and I am very weak and I can't do anything. And I was a prime victim. And I always thought, like, how did I escape without any assault on me? And then come to find out, my brain was just repressing every single episode of assault that it could remember or that happened because it couldn't handle it. So anyway, back to Snowflake. So I would sleep with this bear. That was over the summer when I was 9. Then I believe it was in October when we had this burn pile, which was mentioned in the intro of this video, where the infamous Daisy, Daisy, that little singing sunflower was murdered and melted for the simple act that it was a flower who sings and flowers don't sing. How dare you for imagining a flower could sing?
There was regret. There
So
was
you-
regret for that one, though.
So you guys had to get rid of everything that you thought was real or that was fantasy.
No, it was as I understand it, and I could be wrong, my mom had a relative who fantasized about talking animals, and she was mentally ill. And my mom connected that with the demonic somehow. So she drew this bridge that didn't exist between if you think that animals can talk, then you might be mentally ill and therefore demonic. So she wanted us to get rid of anything that we thought could talk. So we weren't allowed to watch Winnie the Pooh.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was literature within ATI. I think it was ATI that talked about this.
There probably was.
And the reason that they did this burn pile was
So
because
just to clarify, ATI, for those who don't know, is
Right. Advanced Training Institute, also known as it's IBLP, Institute of Basic Life Principles.
That's basically
ATI is
it's its
specifically
own religion, basically.
Yeah.
That's loosely based
Yes.
on Christianity, and it's a cult.
heavily emphasizes Old Testament judgment God, barely emphasizes New Testament grace. Heavy on the judgment,
And
very
there's
loose on the law.
Bill Gothard, who made up his own life principles that are not even in the Bible, but they're supposedly based on the Bible. And
Yeah.
Yes,
So
all hail
the
Bill
reason we
Gothard.
had this- yeah. So the reason we had this burn pile was because they thought it would help you. They thought you were being
Oh.
plagued by demons. So
Well, I was. but not
so
from the bear.
Their solution was to take all of these items that they believe were giving ground to Satan, and we would burn them. And then
Yes, that was a
would
big
cause us
phrase.
to lose.
take back the
We
ground.
would take back the ground because that was
Take
what
back
was
the
said
ground.
around the fire. That was said, "Yay, we took back the ground."
I
What's
think
the
this is
direction? What's the red herring?
loosely
It's a red herring.
the idea is based on the burning of like all the occult items in the New Testament, where Paul has like all the people burn all the stuff for idol worship. This wasn't even close. We weren't worshiping these things, and they weren't inherently evil. They weren't demon possessed, and it did not help. It didn't help.
Flowers, singing flower toys.
So there's like, I think like, look, if you want to burn something and you need to burn it, if there's a go for it. The problem that I have with it is we were kind of forced to. It was said that we weren't forced, but there was this unspoken rule that you had to go along with this. There was no like, oh, I don't have anything. Like there was such a legalistic mindset that by that time it was just there. It was just deep within how your brain was built that you
Your
were
psyche,
just
your
psyche, that you were just like there was no other choice. There was no other decision that you could make other than throw it all into the fire.
Forced to burn your most prized possessions as young children. That's kind of traumatic.
Right.
For
And
you.
well, I wasn't coerced into doing it right away. I did not put Snowflake into the fire right away. But I want to briefly say about the bear. I have read when you have a mother that is not nurturing, the child will often replace that nurturance with a stuffed animal or a prized possession like a blanket or a pacifier. They've even done studies with monkeys where they had two fake mother monkeys. One was made of wire and provided the food, and one was soft and provided no food. And the rhesus, I believe they were rhesus monkeys, they were babies. They preferred the soft mother. They would play with it and cuddle with it, and they would freak out when it got taken away, as opposed to the metal mother that was simply providing nourishment. So we were fed. Yes, we were fed, because lots of people like to say, well, at least you were fed.
Barely.
I am grateful we got fed.
Grateful for that.
Yeah. However, when there's no nurturance, there is a stunting that goes on in the brain for emotional growth, for intellectual growth, just regular childhood development. So I was using that bear for a nurturing thing. I was holding on to it for dear life. It was there. And I also wanted to say I was also dissociating at this time, just in my daily life. Something that can happen when someone is experiencing abuse regularly is that they can suddenly feel what's the word I'm looking for? Not connected to their body anymore, disconnected from their body. I started to feel like I wasn't real. And I only remember one specific time I did this, but I know I did it multiple times because I was told I've done it multiple times. But again, my brain kind of compressed them onto one incident where I jumped up while we were watching a movie and I suddenly felt like I wasn't real. And I was jumping around the living room screaming, I don't feel real. I don't feel real. And I would ask people to pinch me or hurt me in some way. I wanted to like be slapped really hard, even though I was terrified of the pain, because I just didn't feel real. I didn't like hover above my body or anything. I suddenly felt like I wasn't connected to the physical realm anymore. And it's such a weird phenomenon to explain. Even talking about it now, I'm like, it doesn't feel like that. Like it doesn't, describing it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how could I have gone through that? But I just remember feeling
like
just
you're looking at someone else's life and you don't know you don't recognize who that person is.
Well, I would think I'm not real. Nothing is real. And I would just feel terror. Maybe this is all just fake. Maybe this is all just in my head. Like, what's real? What's the truth? And it would really torment me when that would happen.
Yeah, I remember that happened during the middle of the day. You were sitting on the couch, and I remember this exactly because Mom's response. And you were just crying. You were sobbing and like, Mommy, I don't feel real. I don't feel real. Help me. Somebody help me. And like, I don't know what they did. Honestly, I just remember watching the whole reaction and thinking, I feel the same way, but this is what's going to happen. So I'm not going to say anything. Because I remember feeling the exact same way. I just never said it because no one helped you. So it's like, what's the point? There's no point.
Yeah. I don't remember help. There was no help. It was just usually like, okay, take a big breath. Like my mom didn't know what to do at all. She just seemed really helpless. Like, okay. But that night, the burn pile had happened, and I was asked before the burn pile, as people were like cleaning up, gathering, we like went through all the movies, and we found a movie where there was like ancestor worship in it. And we would burn that. I really had liked that movie because I was so obsessed with Native Americans. And
Lost to the Mohicans or something.
No, it wasn't it against
No.
the Crooked Sky.
no, I have no idea what the movie was.
It wasn't.
I don't
Against
know what it was. I don't know what the movie was. I cannot remember. I know that it wasn't that. I remember there was like a boy and his Native American friend. That's all I remember about it. And they rode horses at some point. Anyway, someone asked me, "Are you going to burn your bear?" And I started to feel guilty from that point on. Like, oh, it didn't occur to me. Like, oh, should I burn it? And I was like, oh no, I know he's not real. And I remember like hitting it against the floor, and I felt bad for doing that because I was like, maybe I do think he's real. What if I do? Like, and then from then on, like I started getting this gnawing shame. Like, oh no, what if I need to burn this and I'm not burning it? Like, oh no. So that night I was in the shower, and I suddenly felt like this horrific fear come over me, like something was watching me in the shower from above me. And I just straight terror coursed through my body, and I scream bloody murder, jump out of the shower, and I'm screaming, and my mom comes running because I sound like I'm dying. And I'm just saying over and over, burn my bear, burn my bear, burn my bear. Tell daddy to burn my bear. So my dad took it up to the burn pile. It was just embers at that point, I'm sure. Because it was hours after. And my memory is that my mom had a towel around me and that she was holding me on her lap as I was just crying, just sobbing. And ever since that time, I always felt disconnected whenever I saw a stuffed animal. I actually thought it was kind of pitiful when children would hold their stuffed animals or talk about binkies or blankets. I would feel disgust because I had to disconnect from that. I had to hate them because I could not get attached to something that could be ripped away from me again. So my body or my mind whenever it would see something nurturing like that, something that could provide comfort, I would hate it. And I would just feel disgust. And I would think other children were kind of like silly, like how dumb is that you sleep with a bear or whatever. I had a sister who slept with a bear, and I always thought that she was just being a baby. I'm like, that's so ridiculous of you to do that. But they didn't have the same trauma that I did. I didn't realize that's what it was from. I just could never connect with the stuffed animal again. I never used any other physical comfort like that ever again. I never got attached to a specific blanket or a specific pillow because I was scared, it would get taken away and be burnt. If something became precious to me, it became a threat. It became a weapon to be used against me. So that happened when I was 9, and I was also peeing in the bed a lot after we moved into the back bedroom. I don't think I was peeing in the bed before that trauma happened at age 9 because I was sleeping on the hide-a-bed, and I feel like I would have remembered if we had to remove the sheets every day because of me. But when we were in the back bedroom, when they finally remodeled it because there was mold seeping in from the bath to the whole carpet was rotting to the point where there were mushrooms growing back there. So they redid the bathroom and the bedroom. And then all of us moved in.
Fell through when they remodeled it.
Yes, it was very, very bad. I mean, the house is over 100 years old. Nobody even knows how old it really is. But yeah. And there's not even a real foundation. It's just rocks from the creek, which is great. Very rustic. Anyway, so we all moved back in there, and there was 2 bunk beds on either side of the room. And Stephanie and the boys slept on one side, and you, Emily, and Corey and Destiny slept on the other side until you fell off and broke your nose. I remember that. And then you refused to sleep on the bunk bed anymore, and you went to the living room to sleep in the recliner.
To the bedroom. So the bunk bed didn't have like a railing?
No.
So again, that's another like repeating.
No, the top bunks did not have railings, and I said, hey, can we get railings up there? And there was no move. I said, I'm not going to sleep on the top bunk until there is a railing. And
it would have been so simple to put up a 2x4 or something.
But it was never put in, and so I slept on the couch for a year and a half until the upstairs was remodeled and finished.
So that's kind of what we talked about in our last episode, was that there was just, because the parents just really didn't care about the kids, that there was not a lot of safety precautions, because wasn't important. Is that something that rings true for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That it was for the children. There was a broken light bulb upstairs. It was one of those weird spiral light bulbs with the twists, and it was broken. I don't know if they were aware that it was broken, but it was up there. It was before the upstairs was finished, but there was enough of a floor that we used to play up there sometimes. And we had an electric keyboard up there, and we would play some of the demo songs on it, and I would be the DJ. Would be very proud of that job. And we would kind of dance. Well, at the time, I wasn't up there. Some of the younger children was up there, and one of my siblings stepped over the light bulb, and it literally opened up their leg. The broken light bulb. Yes, the cap. He had to go get stitches. It was a gash, a bad gash. And it was just so easy to just remove it and throw it away. And I don't know if they didn't know about it or if they just, my guess is they knew and did not care, or no one bothered to tell them, either because they knew they wouldn't do anything.
That repeated over and that's the result of the neglect.
Right. There was never measures to protect us. I remember one time we were unloading trim at night, and I had 2 pairs of those soft gloves on, because it was cold outside, and we were sliding the trim through our hands, and I got a splinter in my ring finger that it was so long, I could feel it on both sides of my finger, and it was very painful. It's my ring finger, and it through 2 pairs of gloves. I mean, they were just soft gloves, but still, I was never taken to the hospital, of course. Like, that was such a minor thing. Just deal with it. But my dad did try to perform surgery, as he would call it, and dig it out with a pocket knife. And I would be sitting at the kitchen table while he was trying to do this procedure. I don't think he sterilized the knife either. It was just pick at it. And it would be so painful. I just remember one night, my other siblings were watching a movie, and I was watching it through the reflection in the window, and I was trying to like escape in my mind, like distract myself, like go somewhere else, because I was so painful. And he just had to stop doing it because it wasn't helping. And they're like, your body will take care of it. And a couple of months later, my body did. But it was so painful when he would try to get it out. And that, to this day, if someone tries to help me get a splinter out, I would rather just live with a splinter pain. Actually, I had a splinter a couple of weeks ago that was pretty bad, and it was hurting me pretty bad. And my husband tried to remove it, and I about came unglued from the pain, and he had to just leave it, and eventually it came out. So
we had a child get a splinter, and we took him to the emergency room because we couldn't get it out without causing him too much pain. So
yeah,
that's kind of the difference of like normal parents versus neglectful parents that don't really love their children. I mean, you also have the log splitter incident. I don't know if you were planning on talking about that.
When I was 15, safety wasn't prioritized at all. There was a family that was over, and they wanted to, so it was near my dad's birthday. So there was a surprise birthday party for him that night. So because they were staying at our house and they wanted to bless my dad, they were doing some wood for us. They were splitting some logs for him to put in our woodshed because we had a wood burning stove. And that was our only source of heat in the winter. So it was November because my dad's birthday is November 5th. So it was right before then. And we were going to have the party that night, but it was that morning. He was at work, and we were all doing wood. And the person that was, so there's 3 jobs to do with the wood splitter, and all the rest of it is usually just stacking or bringing over the logs. The 3 jobs are like pushing the lever down, and then the 2 people on either side are pulling the logs apart as they break, and then positioning the next log. You can also do it with 1 person, but there was 2 of us. And
how old were you?
15. I was 15. I had just turned 15 3 months before, in August. So, and I was pretty small, but the person who was doing that job stopped doing that job for some reason, and I jumped in. And I liked a boy in this family, and I wanted to show, I was a really good worker and everything. I wanted to impress him. So I jumped in, and I was working like way too enthusiastically, and I put my hand on the log right before it split instead of right after it split, because usually it'll go in and then the log will start to split apart, and you can grab it at that point and like help it be pulled apart better. But I grabbed it right before that happened because I was working too fast, and my finger, I only felt a pinch, but it actually, like, right at the first knuckle, it cut into my finger and it just left it dangling just a little bit. It was almost completely torn off. And I managed to pull it out before that happened. And I looked down at it, and just blood started coming in, and I started freaking out. And I didn't feel any pain just yet. And I looked up with horror on my face at the person who was on the other side, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, and he's like, "Do you want to go inside?" And I was like, I just like took off running, and I ran inside, and I was like, "Ah!" And she was like, and I just held out my fingers, blood dripping everywhere, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, "Stephanie, you're gonna have to look at it." This is a common thing. If there was a serious injury, she couldn't look at it. Stephanie would have to look at it to determine if it was a hospital trip. So Stephanie said, yeah, she's gonna have to go to the hospital. So we wrapped my hand in some random towel we found. I don't even know if it was a clean towel. And then the family that was staying with us, the dad insisted on praying before I went to the hospital. Now, I'm a huge fan of praying for healing, but that's not what he wanted to pray for. He just wanted to pray like a general prayer. I don't remember what he said. I just remember standing there, and I had to be quiet because, reverence for God. I had to be quiet during this prayer, and I was stamping my foot. I'm in excruciating pain, and my finger is dangling. I didn't look at it after it went in the towel.
So
I didn't
on the way to the hospital that's 45 minutes away.
Yes, the hospital was 45 minutes away. We couldn't call an ambulance because that was way too, by the time they got there, you could have already been to the hospital. So, yeah, we went to the hospital. We sat in the emergency room for a while, because it wasn't an emergency that I was going to die immediately. Finally got taken back. The numbing was the worst part. They had to get a needle in my finger, and that was the most excruciating pain. But I remember my mom was just texting most of the time because she was trying to set up the party, worried about the party. The person that was comforting me was my best friend in that family that had asked to come along with me. She was singing to me and letting me squeeze her hand, squeeze it very, very hard. And she was distracting me and making me laugh. And so I remember there were ducks on the wall in the emergency room, because when you have a traumatic memory, you often remember random things that stick out very vividly to you. And so the ducks on the wall sticks out. So my dad arrived because he had heard that I had gotten hurt, and my mom started freaking out because the nurse that was helping me went to the church that we were going to have the party at that night. And we had told my dad that we had a singing gig at that party. So my mom was worried that she was going to say, oh, there's no singing tonight. And my dad was starting to get suspicious. So that was her big worry. My dad actually did help a lot. He came with me to the x-ray room, and he was waving at me from behind the window to distract me. So he was actually really, really kind to me during that time. And the nurses were really kind and everything. I just remember my mom was off in her own world. I don't remember her saying, I'm so sorry this happened, putting her arm around me, comforting me in any way, speaking any words of reassurance. It was just kind of she was just there to drive me to and from the hospital. It was so weird. I know she was distracted with the party, and then I had to go to the party. It wasn't even an option to stay home. I had a ton of pain medication in my system. I felt very irritable that night. I wasn't in pain yet, but I just remember feeling so irritated that whole night. I did not want to be around people. I just wanted to go off by myself. It was a huge party, and there were so many people. Thankfully, they did not force me to sing, which I'm very surprised by. But I was on pain medication, and I remember crying at one point and being I'm not okay. And then that night, the pain medication wore off, and I was in excruciating amounts of pain. My fingernail never grew back correctly.
Your fingernail?
And yeah, to this day, I don't know if you can see correctly, but
you can see that a little bit. Yeah.
It's definitely deformed. It grew. Thankfully, it did grow back, but I still have weird twinges of pain. If I twist it a certain way, because all the nerves were cut off. I couldn't even feel the end of my finger, and thankfully it healed pretty well. I had 16 stitches in the nail bed, and then the nail was completely crushed into my finger. But those are the kinds of injuries that I won't say mine was common because nobody else got hurt. And I still had to help with wood as if it had never happened.
Another sibling got very bad hand injury like that.
He did from a different, it wasn't doing wood. It was from a different,
right. But yeah, it was not caring, not using protection.
Yes,
Yeah, so-
there was no
Yeah.
safety instructions. I don't remember my
Well,
dad
yeah.
saying, "This is a nail gun. If you apply this to your, if it accidentally falls and hits your leg, and you pull the trigger at that time, you will get a nail in your leg." That happened to one of my siblings on a job site. There was no, this is fire, and this is what it does. And if the wind is blowing the wrong way, or if you use too much gasoline, which my dad did, he used so much gasoline on a fire one time, he actually 3rd-degree burned his legs. He charred them so bad, and I've never heard my dad scream in pain. My dad was usually
like, flying back from the.
yes, a child was also was standing on a stump and blown back by the force of the blow. My dad like poured gasoline over a bonfire and then threw a stick of fire at the burn pile, and it exploded. So
So to
there
recap,
was
what's
just-
all the abuse then that we've covered so far?
I think we've covered a little bit of religious abuse, a little bit of sexual, a little bit of emotional, and a little bit of verbal. There was also medical abuse.
And physical, the beatings.
Yes, physical. We've also covered physical. All of the
Basically, all the stuff in our video series is true.
yes.
Well, there you have it. Anyway, we should let you get on with telling your story.
Yes, it is true. It is important to verify truth sometimes, because when you're the only truth teller in a family full of seemingly good people, it can be extremely hard for people to believe you, especially when you have a nice family image like ours did. No one wants to believe the scapegoat. No one wants to believe the truth teller, because what they're saying sounds so bad, and no one wants to believe a horrible, horrible story, because then they're confronted with, could I have done something?
I appreciate all your comments for here too.
I can't really see. I can't really see who's. I can't see any of those comments unless I like squint. So it's probably a good thing because it keeps me from getting too distracted. But yes, we appreciate all the support and the love. It's so helpful, especially when
That's
in the what?
the compassion and the sympathy, because there's been a couple of people say that they were sorry.
Oh, that's so loving. That's so kind.
Because right now, what
It
is
is-
the official story in the family is just that Haley's crazy, or that I've embellished and convinced her that things are worse than they actually were. It's all my fault.
Yes. That is actually so far from the truth. I think that you would rather it not be true.
Which is it? Are you crazy or I'm evil? Or both? I guess it could be both.
Both. It's both. Okay. She's crazy and you're taking advantage of her.
You're taking advantage of my crazy.
That's it. But I did not experience that. Like, in fact, my husband had a really hard time believing any of this, because he's like, when I started to realize that, you know, my upbringing was traumatic, he was like, not against it, but he was having such a hard time believing it because it sounds so unbelievable. He's like, you have seemed like you've been fine with your childhood up until this point, and now all of a sudden your parents are villains. And I'm like, I'm working through stuff. I know this stuff happened to me. I know by the definitions that I was abused. I didn't even realize how much then. It slowly unraveled over many, many years, honestly. You can't come to
right. So
grips
it's like, for
with
example,
it
you
overnight.
knew, you guys remembered being spanked that were actual beatings. You just didn't know how serious and how bad it was until you got context.
Yes, we were
That's the
told
problem.
we
You're
had a
all
great
in this
childhood.
You didn't know what
An
was
echo
abuse and
chamber.
what wasn't. Yeah.
Yes. And when we would say we had a good childhood, what I was referring to was all the times I was playing with my siblings outside. My good memories did not really involve my parents. I could remember a few times when I was a teenager where mom would pat me on the back when I was doing dishes, and it would flood my whole body with this like crazy high. Like it was like a like a dopamine rush. Like, oh my goodness, I want that again so badly, because it was so infrequent that whenever I would get it, I would just, my whole body would be like, better take this in. It's not going to happen for a while. I don't really remember them saying I love you or giving us little doses of affection throughout the day. And I understand they had a lot of children. I do understand that. And I know they were overwhelmed. There is grace to be had for that. But I've seen parents with a lot of children still show affection to each one of their children. So you can't say that it was just because they had a lot of children, because there are parents who prioritize that. And with my own children, it just comes naturally to say I love you, to speak words of encouragement, even in, on busy days. There's so many moments to be able to do that. But they did use praise as a weapon and triangulated us against our siblings. So I was triangulated a lot against Haley and sometimes against Corey. Corey for the cleaning and Haley for
So what does triangulation mean?
So you pit one person against another. So it's a triangle. So it'd be me or me down here, because how could I dare put myself at the top of the triangle? And then mom at the top, and then she would triangulate me against you. So there would be 3 people in the triangle. You were triangulated against other people for talents you didn't have. It was nobody won in that scenario. Like the other sibling didn't feel better about themselves because they were being compared to another sibling. So I felt constantly compared to Haley, because Haley was the golden child, and she was put on a pedestal. And
right,
what?
We defined what
Yes.
golden child means in our first video. It's part when you're in a what's called an enmeshed family.
Yes, and there's a unhealthy amount. Yeah, there's the black sheep, which was another sibling who can do nothing right, and then the golden child who can do nothing wrong. And then usually there's just the lost children, just kind of stuck in there. And I was a lost child. Thankfully, I wasn't the black sheep, because that's a whole other.
You became the golden child at one point, and other siblings are golden children at different points.
Yes, depending on what mom needed at the time. So Haley was used as her golden child. It wasn't a special position. It was not, you would not covet this position if you were looking at it from the outside, because what you would be doing as the golden child is attending to mom's emotional needs. So I became what she called her therapist, and she would have inappropriate conversations with me about her relationship with my dad. And at the time, I was struggling in my relationship with my dad, and she would be confiding in me about things he'd said or done. And I would be so thrilled that mom was being vulnerable with me, and that I seemed to be making her feel better. So I felt needed and wanted. And I do remember when, as I got older, just not thinking mom had much of a personality at all. Like I didn't connect with her at all. And then when you got married, Haley, and she no longer had your supply of empathy, and she wasn't using you as a therapist anymore, I stepped into that place, and I suddenly felt needed. And I was like, wow, mom is so cool. Like we're so much alike. And these were things that she wanted me to believe. She started telling me, you look so much like me when I was younger. She did not tell me that before. Before it was, Haley looks so much like mom. She's her mini me. And then when you moved out and broke her heart by becoming your own unit, she didn't have her supply anymore. So she started using me.
My fault. I grabbed the girl and ran, as they say. What happens when you get married? I don't know I guess they didn't know that.
Yes, apparently they never read the Bible where it says a man must leave his father and mother and become one with his wife. Yeah, that's not. How about you move into the back? How about
They wanted me to move to Indiana.
There's nothing for you in it. Yeah, that's another conversation.
I was going to school and I had a job in Florida.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was wild. All the things, all the expectations in that relationship. But anyway, you moved out, and I became the golden child. And then I moved out, and I was still somewhat the golden child. Another sibling did take my place for emotional support, like in a physical capacity, but from far away. I would give my mom the best compliments. I am there because I learned that words are potent, and words give you power, and words can calm someone else down if you fawn over them. So there's 4 kinds of responses to abuse. There's freeze, there's flight. So freeze would be where you just like lock up and you're just completely like cold inside, you're frozen. You can't do anything. You don't talk, you don't move, you just stand there. So if you're being screamed at, this is often what we do. Flight, where you physically run from the abuse you're dealing with. Only happened to me once when I did something outside that I wasn't supposed to, when my mom chased me around the yard with a stick trying to smack me. Then there's freeze, flight,
Fight.
Flight. Yeah, I said flight. What's the
I said
third
fight.
one? And then there's fight. Yes, fight. You could fight, which definitely wasn't an
We
option for us.
didn't
You
fight.
could
That's
not
why
fight.
we didn't really remember that one.
Yeah, it's really hard to remember something that you like never occurred to you. Like you could never, I would never ever have thought of talking back to my parents. Like that was no. I'd rather dissociate than talk back because that was so much more punishment if you did. You just learned that was a really stupid move. I had a sibling that would fight back and it didn't go well. I did end up fighting back in arguments with my dad when I got older, but it was so unavoidable. There would be a few days where I would manage to ignore him and I would have complete peace and I would write in my journal something like, oh, it's been a blissful couple of days. I've been able to like avoid dad like the plague, like not talk to him. And then he would, why are you mad? Why are you not talking to me? Are you mad at me? And then we would get into this whole thing. And then I would try to, talk to him and just so that wouldn't happen. And then we'd get in more arguments. So I just could not win. I couldn't win. If I tried to talk to him about anything, he would belittle me. He would argue with me. Anyway, so there's fight. And then the last one is the one I am most familiar with is fawn. And this is not as much talked about. I think because it doesn't look as dramatic as the other three, but I would fawn over people in advance so they wouldn't abuse me. So whenever I would meet someone I was going to spend time with, I would make sure to get in those little compliments early. I would make sure to take notice of things that I could compliment them on. And I learned how to tailor my personality to each individual person that I met. I wasn't authentic, even though I craved authenticity. I was terrified to just be myself. I didn't know who I was, for one, because we were never allowed to be individuals in our family. You were like mom. And if you're not, then we don't want you. So I just had to learn to be like mom. So I was told I was just like mom as I got older. And so I learned to use my words to calm her down, to placate her, to make her feel good. I even wrote her a letter about how she was such a good mom. I wrote my dad a letter about how he's such a good dad. Like these are the fawning things I did after I got married to ensure my place in the family. And every time I would come home, they would treat me like a celebrity. And I would be on such a high. I would be so exhausted. I would have headaches. My body would ache. I'd be so tired. Every time I would leave their house after visiting, I would be so drained emotionally, mentally, and physically. And yet I couldn't stop. I needed that drug. I needed the high off of being so important to the family because I was finally needed. I was finally a valuable member of the family. I wasn't the lost child anymore. I craved that. And what I didn't have was acceptance in Jesus Christ. And so when you don't have acceptance from somebody, we're meant to belong in God's family. And when you don't belong in God's family, like I didn't, then you need to belong somewhere. And so I had to belong to the family because I had no other support system. And I did not know how to build one because, we were in the military at the time and my friends were constantly coming and going just due to the fluctuating nature of military. Nobody ever could stick around because we were moving or they were moving. And so I knew if I didn't have family, I would not have a reliable support system. So I had to keep them. And that was a really long time. Where were we even going with that?
I don't know.
Where's the how do we come back?
So yeah, Joseph, I just want to clarify. Are you asking if my siblings, we were safe as in like nothing was going on in the home when you guys visited, or were we safe from like with your family members? I just want to clarify before answering the question.
So I think what was the last thing? So we're talking about your injuries. Was that when you were?
Yeah. Medical abuse. I was talking about medical. We didn't cover medical abuse. There were times when a child needed to be taken to the hospital that they weren't. You mentioned in your last video a severe concussion, and my dad wrote it off and said he would be fine. I also experienced some medical abuse. After when I was 15, I started experiencing like intense mood swings. You could write that off as hormones. I would. But then I started experiencing like physical pain in my body. And for some reason, I just thought it was Lyme disease because I had been around a fawn, a baby deer, and it had a lot of ticks. There were just so many ticks that year because we didn't have a bad winter. So just so many ticks. So I could have been bitten. I never had a bullseye rash. I don't have proof that I had Lyme disease. I don't think I did. But that was just the label that was given to me. And mom also told me that I need to go off gluten, even though she never took me to an allergist and had me tested for that. She was on the food train the train of food allergies. So everything was food allergies. So I was told I was allergic to that. And then I was told intolerant to gluten. I wasn't allergic. I wouldn't die if I had it. But I never made the connection that usually when I ate gluten, because she didn't have it in the home at the time, usually when I ate gluten was when we were at an event. And by that point, my body was so overwhelmed by the abuse I was experiencing at home that any added stress, like going to an event, would further stress me out and just cause this physical fatigue and overwhelm and headaches, and my eyes would get really dry and my body would just ache. And then I would come home and sleep for 3 or 4 hours, if not more. And I would always wake up feeling more tired than when I went to sleep. It was awful. I never felt refreshed, but I felt like I need this nap. I need this nap. I have to have this nap. And I would go to sleep. I'd wake up and everything would hurt so much worse when I would wake up. And my just everything would ache with this like deep, it was like a deep ache everywhere in my body, especially around my joints. And there were sometimes I would wake up and I wouldn't be able to move. Sometimes I would have sleep paralysis where I would feel like I couldn't move and I would want to scream, somebody save me, and I couldn't do anything. That was really scary. But other times I would just lay there and I felt like I physically can't move because my body won't let me. Like I would be awake, but I couldn't open my eyes, and it would feel awful. And I thought that was food allergies, food intolerance. But we used to go to the nursing home once a week. My uncle would take me and Corey to go volunteer there, and I would get that same feeling after we'd go there, and I would be so confused because we wouldn't eat anything when we were there, except for maybe fruit on the way home, just fruit. And so I told my uncle, I think I'm allergic to the carpet cleaner there, because I could not figure out why, how I could have this same reaction I had when I ate gluten. Yes, that could be the only reason. Yeah. So I just wrote it off as food allergy. I tried very hard to stay away from the foods that I was told I was intolerant to. I was just going off of what other siblings were avoiding. It was like I could never get ahead of it, because the more foods I took off my list, the less I could eat and the harder it got for me to eat. But I was still experiencing the same symptoms. They never went away until I moved to Germany, way far away from my family. And then, magically the food of Germany made me feel all better. And it is true that their food is so much cleaner and so much better. But I still experienced the fibromyalgia symptoms, because that's what I eventually realized that I had. So during that time when I was experiencing the pain in the beginning, I was never taken to a doctor or an allergist to determine the cause of my problems. I was just given, you have Lyme disease like Haley, who was taken to the doctor and to a scientist.
Yeah.
And you can try to kill it or not. We don't care. I never felt like anyone cared that I was in pain. I would wake up with back pain so bad. This more happened when I was 17. So when I was 17, I was raped and also strangled in another sexual assault by a family member. And after that, my symptoms worsened. That's when I really started taking the naps and just being so tired, fatigued all throughout the day. I felt incredibly weak. My body just felt so awful. I ached all the time. I just wanted some relief. And like sleep was the only escape. And I would sleep for a while. After I graduated, I would sleep until 9 a.m. and I just did not want to get up before then. And it wasn't that I stayed up super late, because I also would have trouble like staying awake. So I was getting like 9-10 hours of sleep a night, and I still felt energyless and just fatigued. And it never occurred to me to go to my parents and say, I have pain. And I mean, there was one time you remember this, Haley, where mom gave us something for the
Teasel.
Lyme disease?
Teasel root.
Teasel root. I don't remember exactly what it was. I just remember that night.
Teasel root.
It's crazy. There can be so much rape going on, and the parents do nothing or don't know about it.
I don't know.
Teasel root.
Yeah. I don't know if they knew about mine because I don't know if I ever said anything. I don't remember. I did not remember it.
While we're on the subject, why don't we just go ahead and answer this one? Yeah, to the extent of my knowledge, Joseph said he asked if we were safe with his family around. To the extent of my knowledge, nothing ever happened.
Yes, to the extent of mine as well. Nothing ever happened with your family. Fair question. Because so many of the families that we were around were also experiencing this in their families. A lot of families that Michael Johnson pastored. And I say that in quotations because when you're shepherding a flock, you should shepherd them, not let this stuff fly by right under your nose. You should know about this stuff.
There's like 11 different families.
11, at least that we know of, that were under his
Michael
care.
Johnson, if you're watching this, you should resign as a pastor. I don't know how you can keep going on being a pastor and have this rampant abuse and physical abuse, sexual abuse going on in your congregation and think you're doing it.
Many of the children that were sitting under your care, your sermons each week, have contacted Haley and told them about the horrific things that were happening while they were there in your church. And you should feel so ashamed that you used God's word and the pulpit that you had to allow this to happen. You created a system. You helped foster a system where the men had all the power and all the voice and all the ability to speak, and the women were shunned into silence and told to be quiet and submissive and gentle and meek and just go along with whatever the man wanted because he's the head of the home and he needs to be obeyed. And you created a hierarchy there, and women were not treated with value under your care, and children even less so. We had no voice. We had no rights. We had no value. You can say you're pro-life all you want, but until I see some proof where you actually stand up against the injustice done to the children, pro-life doesn't mean when they're just in the womb. You should be pro-life for everything. You should be against animal abuse. There's so much rampant animal abuse in our home as well. Just horrific. But you should be protecting children after they're out of the womb as well. It was like once you're born, you're here, so take care of yourself.
Children can consent, so that's your own fault, Mackenzie. You should have said no.
But when you teach children that when you say no, you beat them, no, children can't consent. They can only comply.
Yeah, obviously,
that is a completely different thing. I thought
everyone knew that. I thought that was common sense if you cared about children.
I care so much about children. If I found out that I have thought in the past that something might have happened to them, and I was livid. I was so livid. I would go to jail if someone hurt my children like that, if someone abused my children that way. The rage, the just anger against the injustice. The children are the most vulnerable of our society, and they were the least valued. We were gone hours of the day.
Some of you guys tried to get help. Some of you did speak up and were shut down by members of the church.
Yeah.
I know Haley did.
Yeah. I was instantly told, don't ever say that again.
I know another sibling tried to get the kids out of the home. They tried to get help from another family in the church to get the children out of the home, but then nothing happened.
Yeah. We're always silenced back into submission. But can't do that anymore because it's gone on too long.
That's what we've learned, Joseph. We have learned that this is very common. That's why
the problem.
That's why we have to talk about it.
If it was just our family, too bad. We got bad parents. We got a bad one. We got a streak of bad luck. Too bad. But it's not just our family. That's the problem. And that's why we have to say something, because it wasn't
Anymore.
I wish it was just our family. I wish we were just one screwed up mess. I wish it was just because our parents had horrible childhoods themselves, which they always reminded us of. At least you didn't have my childhood. I am grateful I didn't have your childhood.
Although your
But that
dad
doesn't negate
did
the
admit
abuse.
to us that his father was a better father than he was, so he at least admitted that in the end. But I mean, how many siblings are there total of you guys?
11, including the adopted one.
And like every single one of you have been sexually abused. Not
To
mention
my
all your-
knowledge, I know every single girl. I don't know if every single boy, but based on,
Yeah.
I think every one of my siblings has experienced something. I mean, you can't live in a home that has that rampant. I mean, it's so many instances. It just, like Emily said in the recording, it has touched every one of us. I don't think she meant that ironically, but it is ironic that she used the word touched. But yeah, everyone has been affected by it, and there has been no justice.
So that's
from it.
also probably why we're doing this, is we wanted to get it to stop, and that people who know your family, that they can be aware of that it's not safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Because it's already started to spread. And I won't go into more detail on that, but it's already started to spread.
Yeah, it's already started to spread. And that's kind of why, like, that was one of the reasons why I was like, I gotta go public, is because we were painted as this paragon of Christian virtue.
Yeah.
And
we tried to handle it internally. We did videos to them. We've had conversations, hours of conversations, and they all went to Pastor Johnson trying to get him to do something, and he did nothing.
Yeah.
So like, this is our last resort.
Yeah.
Then it became it's like,
and there's so many more people who
there's
can help too.
other people who just are struggling to speak, because it's like when one person can step out and start talking, someone can do that, then it makes it a little bit easier for someone else to come in and say, hey, that happened to me. Or
yeah,
yes.
because I wouldn't have gotten healing if it hadn't been for you. I mean, I would not have finally repented, I think, because I mean, the Lord could use anything, but he used you in a very special way. It used you talking to me for a year.
If it hadn't been me, he would have used somebody else for sure.
Don't interrupt her.
I'm glad. I am glad it was you. But because I think part of the reason was because you, growing up, you were such a source of pain to me because of the triangulation. I hated you as an adult because I felt I was never good enough for you. It wasn't even your fault. I didn't realize that I was actually angry at Mom for making me feel like I was always up against a standard I couldn't meet. But I couldn't be angry at Mom because that was too dangerous for my mind to think that my caregiver could have been wrong, that she didn't actually love me in the biblical sense. That was too painful to acknowledge. So I put it all on you and just hated and resented you and didn't want anything to do with you. So it was so special that the Lord used you for my healing, because I mean, that's the biggest testimony right there, that a person that I hated more than anyone else in the world, I didn't have anyone else that I hated as much as you, just because of what you stood for. And it wasn't anything that you had actually done to me, because I could remember sweet moments and where, you know, you had shared with me or like protected me, or one time I had a caffeine rush from too much coffee and you like, you know, cuddled with me in bed and like tried to help me through that. And you told me what it was. I didn't go to Mom for that. I went to you. And when I had a reaction to the pain medication, when I had hurt my finger and I started feeling really irritable and was like snapping at the younger children in my room, we were all told to go to the living room. Mom had never gone somewhere and we were going to pray for somebody. I don't remember for what. Wasn't for me, for sure. It was somebody, like sometimes we'd get a phone call from somebody or whatever, and they would have an emergency and we would all gather in the living room to pray. And I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I'm like crying. And you opened up your arms and you're like, come here. You're just having a reaction to the pain medication. So I remember these like wonderful nurturing moments that I had with you. And yet they were all blotted out by the extreme hatred that I felt for you. That was actually hatred towards mom, or anger towards mom for having put me up against the standard. Because you were, to me, in my mind, you were godly, beautiful, perfect, like witty. All the guys wanted you. You were gorgeous. You had like dignity and grace. And I wasn't that. You were so mature. And like one time you did tell me like, Mackenzie, just be more mature or something like that. And I didn't understand what you meant. And I hated the word mature for a long time because I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't know. If you're saying be like you, I can't be like you. I'm not you. I couldn't even begin, as I've been told many times, I couldn't even begin to like achieve your perfection. But it's like, I'm a completely different person, but we weren't honored for our differences. What?
I said all lies.
That is correct. That is correct. None of us were perfect.
There's so
Yeah,
much
that-
conniving and manipulation that went on
Yeah.
to so many factions
Yeah.
that broke out in the family.
Yeah,
It's been-
yeah. It was literally like political. There was political, and
Intrigue.
it still goes on to this day. Let's be
Mhm.
real. There is so
There-
much,
yeah,
so
it's
many
different
political
factions.
games that go on in
Yeah.
our family. It's ridiculous. Like, I think we would be great at,
Should be a movie.
managing, countries to some extent, because we'd be great at, foreign relations and everything. It's like,
There's the backstabbing and the
yeah.
buddying up
Watch
and
out
the
for the spy. The spy is here somewhere.
yes, and your vulnerability is a weapon. Like we would be vulnerable and then it would be turned against you. You would hear, like, if you told someone something, you can guarantee by the next week every single person in the house knew about it. So nothing
even
was
the
sacred,
secrets.
nothing was secret. It was so hard because it was like nothing was treasured, nothing was valuable. Like if I had a crush on someone, I knew everyone knew about it. So I didn't even bother hiding it because I was like, everyone's going to know anyways. So why even try to hide it? Because I can't have anything just to myself. Like I can't just have this, if it probably would have gone away quicker if we hadn't focused on it so much. But because, there would be siblings like always aware. You were always aware when you're around that person that everyone's watching your every move, waiting for you to mess up and say something or do something. That in itself is causing stress in your body. There was just so much stress in the home, just being watched all the time.
Let's touch on that for a second, and the reason I want to, if you're comfortable talking about, the emotional purity and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, let's blow it wide open, baby.
So
Guarding your heart. I thought that
because we had, you remember the blog, The Long Way to Go. We frequently talked about how we're being pure, how, mom gaslit us into saying, we're not in the purity culture. You're not in the pure. What are these people talking about? We're not in the purity culture. See, we don't do these things. And, come to find out we were in the purity culture, like really deep into the purity culture. And,
well, you married your dad in a marriage type ceremony.
Yeah, that's gross. We were all so it started out as, Stephanie had this conviction after watching a video of a courtship. She had this conviction, and mom said in her blog post on this that Stephanie decided this, and she never made any of her children or made any of her daughters, sorry, because the boys didn't have to do this. She never made any of her daughters decide to do that. But each one of them decided that is not true. It was always assumed you were going to pick this. If we hadn't picked that, if we'd picked dating, we would have been cast out immediately or bullied so heavily and pressured so heavily that we would have given up. So like you couldn't date. That was never an option growing up. Now, what I did is technically dating. What I did was technically dating because we were told, I know, shame on me.
You said
that was only after we broke the system.
We broke the system. You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I greatly appreciate that because mom felt like she lost you through that process and she didn't want to lose me, so she toned it down a lot. But we still were pressured into a relationship before either of us were ready. We weren't allowed to get to know each other in person unless we were in a courtship. My mom said I couldn't go anywhere with Titus unless we were courting. Not even if there were chaperones and we were there were people around all the time. We couldn't get to know each other
Know each
in
other
person.
as
We've been
friends
talking,
first.
huh?
Yeah, you should get to know each other as friends first, not in a courtship.
Yeah. So there was huge, and he was not ready. You know, he had never had a relationship in his life, and neither had I. Like, sure, some of it, we had liked people before, but we had never been in a serious relationship before. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about marriage very early on in our relationship, and we don't even know. Like, it occurred to me as our relationship progressed, he could be a psychopath.
Technically.
Yes,
The
that's
system
true.
was
But
still in place. The system was still in place.
Well, we had a different system.
They got more strict with us.
They got more strict with us.
Mm-hmm. They went from courtship to betrothal.
yeah,
Where we didn't even go on a date until after we were married.
Yeah.
That was our first
Yeah.
date. Yeah.
they were also obsessive about you not spending time just getting to know each other. They didn't want you. They demonized you wanting to have private conversations, which is
When
ludicrous.
we were engaged.
This is it's just a relationship between two people, not everyone.
Committed to get married when we can't have private conversations. So it's crazy.
You managed somehow. But yeah,
we're gonna talk about that another.
We're gonna talk about that. We're talking about Mackenzie.
I mean, our stories do have something to do with each other. Like, because of your story, my story happened the way it did. So it is valid to talk about yours too, because what happened to you directly affected my relationship and what happened to me. But we were put at 4 months after we were just talking over video calls, we were pushed into this courtship, and we just hurried along the relationship because it quickly became clear to us, we just need to get out of here. Just need to get out of here. And it was just not, it quickly became clear to me that Titus was safe and he was a good person that I should be around. I had like friends that knew him, and I trusted these friends, and he was so kind to me and just so absolutely loving in a way that I had never experienced. It was actually excruciating at times to be loved in that way. There were times when he would be giving me compliments, and I would want to tell him, please stop, because my brain would be so flooded with overwhelm that I couldn't take it anymore. I would almost disassociate when he would compliment me too much. And I was having a lot of pain during our relationship because of the stress, of just trying to have a relationship. And, you know, we were planning a wedding. He actually planned most of our wedding because I would just get so fatigued thinking about it. Anything to do with the wedding, I would want to fall asleep. In fact, when making a registry, I did fall asleep because I was just so tired. Like, he ended up making our registry. I didn't even know what was on it. So when we got gifts, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I didn't know we were going to get that. And he would be like, we put that on the registry. Because I just couldn't handle it. Like, I couldn't handle hardly any decisions regarding the wedding. I did make some decisions. And my wedding day was a fairy tale. I got what I wanted. I wasn't stressed that whole day. I got to be barefoot. I was so excited to have my wedding. Everyone took the stress off of me. And he really made sure that no one stressed me out that day. So that was really awesome. But I was having so much pain and fatigue during that time that I just couldn't mentally handle it, pretty much anything. I was useless. But there was one time, because of the food allergy.
Fibromyalgia?
Yes, it was definitely the fibromyalgia flaring up, because fibromyalgia. Okay, so fibromyalgia is an autoimmune disease that is usually, they say it's genetically, people are predisposed to it, but you won't get it unless a very traumatic incident usually is what
the environment
triggers it.
Can turn on and off genes, so it can turn on.
Yes.
Genes.
So it turned on the gene for fibromyalgia when I believe that happened when I hurt my finger originally, but then it was further intensified by the rape and the sexual abuse at 17. So by the time, I'm 21 and Titus and I are getting to know each other, I'm 5 years into this disease, and into the severe part of the disease. And it's getting pretty bad. And I thought this was all due to food allergies or just Lyme disease at that point. I didn't know what it was. And it never occurred to me to just try to figure it out myself. I just kind of thought I'll just deal with it. I would trick myself into thinking if I just drink a cup of coffee, it will help, and it did not. I just didn't know what it was, and I didn't even seek medical help after I got married because it just didn't ever occur to me. The doctors were portrayed to me as villains. When we went to go get a medical checkup because we were going to adopt our cousin, we were going to adopt her, so we needed to get medical checkups to make sure that no one had like severe illnesses in the family. They suggested getting a pap smear, and I was 21 at the time. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know anything about women's health. And that's a whole other tangent, not knowing anything about our bodies and being shamed for that. I was never taught properly what my reproductive system was or how pretty much anything worked.
Right,
It's
they believe that was intentional. They believed not to tell you that until 2 weeks before your marriage, roughly, your wedding.
Yeah. And by that point, I had already read some books that his pastor had recommended to us, so I knew how things work. So wasn't all that helpful. And I tried to ask some questions, but she wasn't comfortable answering them. So, and that was when I was almost 22. Actually, I was 22 by that point, and that's what I knew about it. But I wasn't taught
The rape and sexual abuse that happened. It's like, geez, you guys are very fortunate. You didn't end up with any serious problems.
Yeah, it could have been. Yes, and that was the crazy thing because my mom said we didn't need pap smears. You only need that if you're sexually active. Well, how do you know I'm not? Like, I live in your house. Like, you can't prove I'm not. Like, she knew things had happened to other children. Like, there's no guarantee that it hadn't happened to me.
Right,
Like, of the little that she knew.
She witnessed what the one sibling was doing to Haley.
Yeah.
And she was there for that too.
Yep. So she knew about that.
There was also an incidence of, I would call it medical abuse. Medical abuse is when you prevent your child, or you prevent, instead of taking that person to a doctor and getting the correct help that they need, you neglect them. As I'm
So
saying
I
medical
think
abuse. I think that's actually
medical neglect.
Medical
Yeah,
neglect.
medical abuse is where I think that's where you say they have an illness and they don't.
Well,
and then,
that technically happened too.
Okay.
That was, you have Lyme disease, but get it all in there. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about medical neglect. Thank you for correcting me, because that is what it technically is. I realized, like, as I was saying, I was like, that's not technically medical abuse.
Yeah, I thought it was medical abuse too until I'm like, I'm going to clarify this. I was like, oh, okay, there's a whole different category. Okay.
Yay for categories and for naming things. Which, why do we label so many things in this video? It is because when something has a label, then you can take that label and find other people who also have dealt with that labeled thing and read stories about how they got help and what it technically is. Yes. And if you even have it, it's very helpful to have a label for something. It's not good to make it your life, but
no, it's good to name and identify, because I think that's been like most of our adult life since we got married has been identifying and naming the things that we went through, that we have gone through, because we had no idea. We didn't know until we talked to someone who had never been through these things. And so it's like that was half mine and Reagan's conversations after we got married. He'd be like, wait, what? 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 No, what is this? Like, that's not okay. And I'm like, well, this was just life. Okay. I don't know.
Right. You guys didn't know it was normal because, again, you were raised in a cult, in an echo chamber where it was what you thought was normal was actually abuse.
I mean, there's some things where like, okay, this isn't okay. How do we get out? Like, we would have this conversation. I don't know if you were part of those conversations. Were you? When we would go upstairs and we're like, what are we going to do? Like, we gotta have somebody help us. Someone has to help us.
No, like, I do remember thinking, if I ever ran away, anyone I went to would bring me back. So there's no point.
Yeah, that's why I never ran away. It would be fruitless.
But I never voiced it to another sibling. that I remember. I never like made a plan of escape with another sibling. I do remember that
tried.
most of my siblings did try to run away at some point.
Mhm.
Some of them more successful than others. I think I remember one time like running down the road, but it was more like what will happen. And then I looked up and I almost ran into a truck, and I was like, never mind. Just absentmindedly trotting along.
Like a pancake faster than anything, so might as well just go home. But yeah, putting labels on things helps you not be so alone. Like you said, you can identify the group and that other person who has that shared experience.
Then you can go identify like, okay, what do we have in common? What led to this? It can be so helpful to get things up in the light. Like, okay, well, I didn't have that, so what else is common? And then you get all the things together, and then all those testimonies together can become that label of all these people that have gone through the same thing. So,
So we should probably wrap things up. So we're getting close to 2 hours here. So
there's a lot we can say. There's a lot we can
there's
say.
a whole lot more. So I guess in summary, our video series is accurate because that covers a lot of it.
Unfortunately, yes. From your perspective and what you endured, yes, your videos are accurate. And I say it with that caveat because not everything you experienced, I experienced. I mean, you just pointed out some things that I didn't even know in this video. And like the grout jobs that you went on, I didn't experience that. For some reason, I was never taken along on those jobs.
You want to know why?
Because I was a weakling?
No, your hands weren't big enough.
I do have quite small hands.
These sponges, like, remember these sponges were like this big.
So yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
It sounded awful, and I was very glad.
Your sister, though,
because she had bigger hands.
Oh yeah,
they took your younger
sister younger than me. Yeah, and I was always like, okay. It was always like that. What's wrong with me? But also like that secret relief, like,
yeah, like
why am I not getting taken? What's wrong with me? But also, thank God.
Exactly.
So much fear. I would say the prevailing emotion of my childhood was fear. Fear with the nightmares, fear of getting found out, fear of the shame, fear of getting caught.
That's kind of
to live with what?
Terrifying. You had to live with rapists.
That's not a fun idea.
So do you want to preview what we're going to cover in the next part?
Yes. So in the next part, we will talk about everything that I dealt with as a result of this after I got married. The mental things I dealt with, the physical, and the torment that I dealt with in the 5 years after I got married. The fibromyalgia, the ADHD symptoms, or just trauma symptoms. All the terror, the intrusive thoughts, many, many more things. We'll talk about all of that, how it affected me and how it affected my children. And then we can talk about how I ultimately came to Jesus and found out what a great Savior he is. And that's the part that's exciting. That's the part I want to talk about. That's the one that's got me beaming, because that's the exciting part. This part is hard to talk about because I don't.
You got healing.
Yes, and I got healing, and there's healing for this. There's healing for fibromyalgia, even though they'll tell you it's an incurable disease. They'll tell you we don't know how to diagnose it. It's a disease that you have to eliminate everything else. Well, I went to the doctor, and I did finally go to the doctor a couple of years ago, and they told me you have fibromyalgia. You don't have any of the other things that we tested for, and I fit all the fibromyalgia symptoms. And they're like, here's some medication. And yeah, that's in the next video. I don't want to give too much away, but I tried a lot of things, even got into a little bit of new age, but
that video might be later on, right? Because we still got to get through the rest of.
Well, we don't know when we'll have you back on. It depends on schedules and stuff. And then we have some more videos in our series that we got to wrap up.
Yeah, we don't want to have too much.
We can get those done pretty decently fast.
Yeah, we just got to do more live streams.
We'll probably do more live streams because it takes too long to try to edit a video. So.
Yeah.
Things are a bit crazier for kids now.
Mm-hmm.
What? Yes, 5 adorable children, who, by the way, are some of the healthiest children I've ever been around, and have been around a lot of children. So just putting that out there, that I know you guys are doing an amazing job. Your children are sensitive, caring, loving, definitely not traumatized. I've met some traumatized children, and yours don't have any of the hallmarks. So good job.
So thank you for saying that.
That's-
And your check is in the mail.
Oh, look. My gosh. Some good culty humor for you to wrap up this whole dark story.
Yeah, we just hired you to say all this.
That would be really impressive if I could remember all the things you asked me to say. That would be really impressive.
Well, we gave you a script, you know.
Which I've been looking off of this entire time.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It took a lot of guts, a lot of bravery
Yes.
to share all that.
Yes, we're very
And
proud of you. for-
Hopefully, everyone who watched this will tune in for the next one, because got some really good, positive things to share in that one about how you can actually receive healing from all the trauma and abuse, and you're not stuck with that for the rest of your life.
Just to clarify, the next time that Mackenzie's on,
Right. Next time that Mackenzie's on.
Right.
not the
That's
next
right.
live stream with you.
Yes. But we're
You
going to
still
get into
got
that.
some.
Yes, we're gonna get into
Because
that.
we're going to share how Haley got healed of
We're
all
about,
her
we're,
trauma.
we're about to get to my juicy story.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes, and I think that would be good because I mean you having gone through that was the precursor to mine too. So it makes sense that you would have me right in the middle of when you're talking about all the dark stuff first, and then you
Right,
talk
'cause
about your healing.
We've pretty much finished up all the dark stuff because we're kind of getting into more,
I think we're getting into like our relationship.
yeah, our
and stuff.
relationship and then how you got healing.
Ooh.
So what's coming up next?
Did we already do the
Yeah.
Lyme video? Talking about my Lyme experience.
I
And
don't know.
the car accident. And
I don't remember if we did that or
I
not.
don't think we did. So there's still
So a few more things.
a few more things.
Yes, to
this is
everyone
me.
watching though, this is to everyone watching. There is so much love for you. You are so very precious to God, and there is no one beyond hope, no one beyond restoration, and no one beyond healing. Even if you have gone through stuff that's even darker than what I went through, incredibly darker, it does not matter to Him, because the light shines so much brighter than the darkness, so much brighter. And there is healing for anything. He is so powerful and so good and so loving and faithful and true and all the other good things. And so I have
Yes.
love and forgiveness and joy and peace in my heart today simply because of Him. Only because of Him. You can't get that way any other way. I've tried.
And this was a
There's
different
no other
Jesus
way.
that you were raised on, going to Landmark Baptist and ATI.
Absolutely. He's not the Jesus who's waiting around for you to fail. He's not the buddy Jesus who's just peaceful. He is a Jesus who is angry at injustice and who has mercy for the offender, but also requires repentance from that offender. You can't just skate by. Repentance is so important because, well, this is part of the next video, but I had to repent. And repentance is so much more powerful than just, I'm going to stop doing this now, or I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? That's not repentance. That's a Band-Aid. That's a quick fix. And we were forced to forgive anyone who said those words to us, even if we weren't ready to forgive, even if we didn't feel like forgiving, we were forced to do that. And we didn't even know what forgiveness meant. And I have forgiveness for every single person who ever hurt me or abused me. I love everyone who abused me. I have so much love, but that does not mean that I let them continue to abuse me. I do not have much contact with my family. I love them so much, and I long for the day when our relationship can be restored, but that is not where the Lord has our relationship right now. And there's a lot of peace from being just where the Lord has you, even if it means pain for you and that other person. But just because I forgive them does not mean I continue to let them hurt me, because that's not forgiveness. That's stupidity.
Yes. Well said. Well,
Hey,
anyone else-
we prayed before this call that the Holy
Yes.
Spirit would speak to me. That is it. That's all I want to say.
if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them. If you're watching the replay and you have questions, go ahead and leave them below,
Absolutely.
and we'll be sure to answer them as best we can, or maybe even cover that in the next part we do with Mackenzie.
Yes. Yes, ask questions and we can answer them on the next live.
All right. Well, thanks so much for everyone for
Yes.
tuning in, and thank you,
Yes.
Mackenzie, for your bravery and telling your story. And
Yes.
we look forward to getting to part 2, which will be even better. All right. So I guess we'll end the stream.
All right. I love you guys.
Bye.